Then Alex Cross. I know how he'll react. I know how he thinks. I've been watching him. Actually, I've been hunting Alex Cross since he came to the South. The two human monsters moved closer to the house. Chapter 108. I switched on overhead lights in the first room, and I saw one of the captive women, Maria Jane Capaldi, cowered like a frightened little girl against the far wall. I knew who she was. I'd met her parents a week or so back. I had seen old, cherished photographs of her.
"Please don't hurt me. I can't take any more of this,"
Maria Jane pleaded in a hoarse whisper. She was hugging herself, rocking gently back and forth. She had on ripped black tights and a wrinkled Nirvana t-shirt. Maria Jane was just 19 years old, an art major and aspiring painter at North Carolina State in Raleigh. "I'm a police detective," I whispered in the softest voice possible. "Nobody can hurt you now. We won't let them." Maria Jane moaned, and she began to cry tears of relief. Her whole body was quivering. "He can't hurt you now, Maria Jane," I reassured her in the softest voice I could manage. I could barely speak, actually. "I have to find the others. I'll be back, I promise you. I'm leaving your door open. You can come out. You're safe now." I had to help the others. His harem of special women was right here. Naomi was one of them. I broke into the next room in the passageway. I still couldn't catch my breath. I was exhilarated, frightened, saddened, all at the same time. A tall blonde woman in the room told me her name was Melissa Stanfield. I remembered the name. She was in nursing school. I had so many questions, but there was time for only one. I gently touched her shoulder. She shuddered, then collapsed against me. "Do you know where Naomi Cross is?" I asked her.
"I'm not sure," Melissa said. "I don't know the whole layout here."
She shook her head and began to cry. I don't think she even knew who I was talking about. "You're safe now. The nightmare is finally over, Melissa. Let me help the others," I whispered. Out in the hall again, I saw Samson unbolt a door. I heard him say, "I'm a police detective. It's safe now." His voice was soft. Samson the Gentle. The women we had freed were wandering, dazed and confused, out of the prison rooms. They hugged one another in the hallway. Most of them were sobbing, but I could feel their relief, even their joy. Someone had finally come to help them. I entered a second hallway at the end of the first. There were more locked doors. Was Naomi here? Was she alive? The pounding in my chest was unbearable. I opened the first door on the right, and there she was. There was Scoochie, the best sight in the entire world. Tears finally streamed from my eyes. I was the one who couldn't talk now. I thought that I would have a permanent memory of everything that happened between the two of us. Every word, look, nuance.
"I knew you'd come for me, Alex,"
Naomi said. She staggered into my arms and held me tightly.
"Oh, sweet, sweet Naomi,"
I whispered. I felt as if thousands of pounds had been lifted off me.
"This makes it worth everything. Well, almost."
I had to look at her up close. I held her precious face in both my hands. She seemed so fragile and tiny in the room, but she was alive. I had finally found her. I called out for Samson.
"I found Naomi! We found her, John! In here! We're in here!"
Scoochie and I folded into each other's arms, just like old times. If I had regretted becoming a detective at any other time, this made up for it. I realized now that I'd thought she was dead. I just couldn't give up the fight. Never give up.
"I knew you'd be here just like this. I dreamed it. I lived for this instant. I prayed every day, and here you are."
Naomi managed the most wonderful smile I've ever seen.
"I love you."
"I love you too. I missed you like crazy. Everybody did." After a moment, I gently pulled away from Naomi. I remembered about the monsters and the way they had to be thinking now, still plotting everything. Leopold and Loeb, all grown up, committing perfect crimes. "Are you sure you're okay?" I smiled finally, the beginning of a smile anyway. I could see some of the old intensity returning to Naomi's eyes. "Alex, go. Get the others out," she urged me. "Please let the others out of these cages he kept us in." Just then, a strange, terrible sound echoed in the passageway, a scream of pain. I ran from Naomi's room and saw the one thing I could never imagine happening, not in my worst nightmares. Chapter 109. The loud, deep-voiced call for help had come from Samson. My partner was in trouble. Two men, both wearing ghoulish masks, were struggling over him. Casanova and Rudolph? Who else could it be? Samson was down in the hallway. His mouth was open in shock and pain. A knife or ice pick protruded from the center of his back. It was a situation I had faced twice before, riding patrol on Washington's streets. A partner in trouble. I had no choice, and probably only one chance. I didn't hesitate. I raised my Glock and fired. I surprised them with the quick shot. They hadn't expected me to shoot while they were holding Samson. The taller of the monsters grabbed his shoulder and fell back. The other looked down the hallway at me. The cold glare of the fierce death mask was a warning. Still, I'd taken away their edge. I fired the pistol a second time, aiming at the second death mask. All the lights went out suddenly in the underground house. At the same time, rock and roll music erupted from speakers hidden somewhere in the walls. Axl Rose howled, "Welcome to the Jungle." Pitch blackness fell over the hallway. The rock music shook the foundations of the building. I clung to the walls and moved steadily toward where Samson had gone down. My eyes pressed into the darkness and a terrible fear swept over me. They had jumped Samson, and that was no easy task. The two of them seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Was there another way in or out? I heard a familiar low growl. Samson was up ahead. "I'm here. Guess I didn't watch my back." He gasped out the words. "Don't talk." I moved closer to where his voice had come from. I knew approximately where he was now. I was afraid that maybe they hadn't left. They had just improved their odds, and I was sure they were waiting to jump me. They liked to work 2-on-1. They needed to twin. They needed each other. Together they were unbeatable, so far. I inched my way along the wall, pressing against it with my back. I moved toward shapes and shifting shadows at the end of the passageway. There was a faint glimmer of amber light ahead. I could see Samson curled up on the floor. My heart was pounding so fast, there was barely a space between the beats. My partner was badly hurt. This had never happened before, not even when we were kids on the streets of D.C. "I'm here," I said to Samson, kneeling beside him. I touched his arm. "You bleed to death, I'll be pissed off," I told him. "Just be real still." "Don't sweat it. I'm not going into shock, either. Nothing shocks me anymore," he groaned. "Don't be a hero." I held his head lightly against my side. "You've got a knife stuck in the middle of your back." "I am a hero. Go on. You can't let them get away now. You already hit one. They headed toward the stairs, the same way we came in." "Go, Alex. You have to get them." I turned at the sound of Naomi's voice. She knelt over Samson. "I'll take care of him." "I'll be back," I said. Then I was gone. I turned a dark corner of the long passageway in a low, shooting crouch. I found myself entering the first corridor we'd come to. They headed toward the stairs, Samson had said. Light at the end of the tunnel? Monsters hiding along the way? I moved faster in the semi-darkness. Nothing would stop me now. Well, maybe Casanova and Rudolph could. 2 against 1 weren't the odds I wanted on their home field. I found the doorway out at last. There was no lock, no doorknob. I'd blown it away. The stairway was clear. At least it looked that way. The trap door was open. I could see dark pine trees and patches of blue sky overhead. Were they waiting up there for me? The 2 clever monsters? I climbed the wooden steps as quickly as I could. My finger was light on the Glock's trigger. Everything was surging out of control again. I exploded up the final stairs like an all-pro fullback through a small hole in the line of scrimmage. I burst from the rectangular opening in the ground, did a semi-acrobatic roll, came up firing the Glock. At the least, my combat routine might ruin somebody's aim. No one was there to shoot me or applaud my performance either. The deep woods were silent and appeared absolutely empty. The monsters had disappeared, and so had the house. Chapter 110. I chose the same general direction that Samson and I had come in. It was definitely one way out of the woods, and it might be the route Casanova and Will Rudolph would take. I hated leaving Samson and the women, but there was no other choice, no other way. I stuck the Glock into my shoulder holster, and I started to run. Faster and faster as my legs began to work again, remembering how to run fast. A trail of fresh blood on leaves led a few yards into the thick undergrowth. One of them was bleeding heavily. I hoped he would die soon. I was on the right trail anyway. Vines and thorny bushes tore at my arms and legs as I moved through the densely overgrown thicket. The leafy branches whipped across my face. I didn't care about being whipped. I ran for what must have been a mile, or seemed like it. I was perspiring, and searing pains ripped through my chest. My head felt as hot as the engine of an overheated car. Every footstep seemed heavier than the last. For all I knew, I was putting distance between myself and the two of them. Or maybe they were right behind me. Maybe they had watched me come out, trailed me, circled around behind me. 2-on-1 wasn't how I wanted this to go down. I looked for more signs of blood or torn clothing, some sign that they had been through here. My lungs were on fire now, and I was soaked with perspiration. My legs ached and were tightening up. I had a flashback, a rush of images. I was running with Marcus Daniels in my arms in Washington, D.C. I saw the poor little boy's face again now. I remembered hearing Samson scream in shock and pain back at the house. I saw Naomi's face. Something was up ahead. 2 men were running. One of them was holding his shoulder. Was it Casanova? Or the gentleman? Didn't really matter. I wanted both of them. Wouldn't settle for less. The wounded monster showed no signs of slowing. He knew I was bearing down on him, and he unleashed a blood-curdling yell. It reminded me that he was an unpredictable madman of the highest order. The scream, "Yah!" echoed through the fir woods like the howl of a wild animal. Then another primal scream, "Yah!" It was the other madman. Twinning, I thought. They were both natural animals. They couldn't survive anymore without each other. The sudden sound of gunfire caught me off guard. A chip flew off the bark of a pine tree and whipped past my head. It came within an inch or two of cutting me down, killing me on the spot. One of the monsters had turned around that fast, fired off a shot. I crouched behind the tree that had taken a bullet for me. I peered out through leafy branches. I couldn't see either of them up ahead. I waited, counted off the seconds, tried to get my heart to start again. Which one of them had fired the shot? Which one was wounded? They had been near a crest of a steep hill in the woods. Had they gone over the top? If they had, were they waiting for me on the other side? I slowly moved out from the safe cover of the tree and looked around. It was eerie and quiet again. No screams, no gunshots. No one seemed to be there. What the hell were they up to? I had just learned something new about them, though. I had another clue to go on. I'd seen something important a moment ago. I sprinted to the balding crest of the hill up ahead. Nothing. My heart sank, fell 1,000,000 miles into the abyss. Had they gotten away after all this? I kept running. I couldn't let this abomination happen. I wouldn't let the monsters go free. Chapter 111. I thought I knew the direction to the state highway, and I headed that way. I had my second wind, or maybe my third, and ran more easily now. Alex the Pathfinder. Maybe 200 yards ahead of me, I spotted them again. Then I saw a familiar flash of gray, a curling ribbon of highway. I could make out a few white-shingled buildings and ancient-looking telephone lines. A highway. The way for them to escape. The two of them were running in the direction of a shambling roadhouse. They still wore their death masks. That told me Casanova was in charge, the natural leader. He loved his masks. They represented who he believed he really was, a dark god, free to do whatever he chose, superior to the rest of us. A red and blue neon sign blinked trail dust on the roadhouse roof. It was one of those country gin mills that got good customer traffic all day. The monsters were heading that way. Casanova and the gentleman caller climbed into a late-model blue pickup truck parked in the lot. Busy tavern lots were a good place to park a car inconspicuously. I knew that as a detective. I raced across the state road toward the roadhouse. A man with long, frizzy red hair was just climbing into his Plymouth Duster in the parking area. He wore a wrinkled Coca-Cola work shirt and had a bulky brown bag shoved under one arm. liquid groceries. "Police!"